This program is powered by AIM Employers Association and Ogletree Deacons, a Feature Group USA production.
Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association. A recent Forbes console article called it out. In a hybrid world, we've confused activity with achievement. And more flexibility will get the more flexibility we have, the blurrier our understanding of productivity becomes. Strap in as HR Dr. Phil's Tough Truth is coming up next on This Week at Work.
This Week at Work is the only show to pack workplace news, practical HR solutions, and timely insights into every 30-minute episode. From boardroom battle plans to courtroom consequences, each week we discuss the latest topics that matter most to HR professionals and business leaders like you.
Gallup is showing that manager engagement is continuing to drop. Well, if manager engagement is low, wouldn't we naturally think that their employees that report to the manager engagements will even be lower? There's a low supply, so the employees get a chance to demand their working conditions, and I accept that. Happiness and engagement are not the same. We see engagement scores continue to decline.
Leave each episode with a downloadable prescription to either heal or strengthen your work life. All this and more on This Week at Work.
All right, welcome back, everyone. The Gallup poll shows us that manager engagement is plummeting. It really is a problem for us across the country, and it's a critical leading indicator. And according to Forbes, 74% of our workforce say they're about productivity at home, yet 41% of leaders doubt it. So employers are saying, hey, I'm more productive, I'm as productive or more productive at home, and yet 41% of managers doubt it. That is a real problem. I'd love for that to be a matching score. But the issue is, how do we recalibrate? Our KPIs are probably off. We're not used to managing people when they are afar. It's new to us in general in the scale in which we're doing it. So, are you ready for the tough truth?
Truth is like a lion. Let it loose. It will defend itself.
All right.
Wow.
Productivity in a hybrid world isn't invisible. It's just probably measured wrong. Burt, when we think about how we measure productivity, this has been an issue, and I'm sure you've been in this problem. You've dealt with this problem as much as I have, but I've dealt with it my entire career. It's really easy to measure productivity when we're talking about how many widgets do you produce in an hour, or how much is produced at the end of the day, right? But how do you or I or anyone else, and this has been the debate for me for 35 plus years, how do you measure the productivity of certain jobs and certain positions that aren't tied to the output of a daily measurement standard?
HR, for example. HR, for example. HR, for example.
HR is one of
Yeah.
the toughest ones.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say, first of all, in general, HR people are not good at showing in numerical format how productive they are. Yeah, it was interesting. The other day, I was in one of my roundtables. This happened very recently, and I asked the group that was in the roundtables, there was, I don't know, 25, 30 people in the group, how many report their recruiting statistics to their management on a weekly basis. Not one person raised their hand. How many do it on a monthly basis? No one raised their hand, right? But yet, I know that business leaders are concerned with the ability to recruit and attract talent and retain talent. So you would think this would be a key core indicator of how we measure productivity. And yet we don't do it very well. We don't do it frequently, and it's not done universally. And that's what makes it really difficult. So when we talk about productivity and we talk about remote work, this is where we start to have a problem. First, remote work in the scale in which we're doing it is very new to us. This is not something that we've been doing for 30 years and we have a new way of working. This is something that's very recent since COVID. Yes, there have been some people, and yes, there have been some jobs that have had remote work, but there hasn't been the scale of remote work and hybrid work like we have today. And, I was thinking about just this real simple example. When people are in the office and you're walking into a meeting room, yeah, and you walk by and someone's on the phone and you can see them visibly and they go, "You're right there. I'm on the phone with the customer," right? And you go, "Got it." And you feel good about that. You're like, "Hey, they're taking care of the customer. I'm excited by that." You go into the room and you say, "Hey, Bert's going to be right with us. He's taking care of the customer right now." And Burt may never show up because he's taking care of the customer for the length and the time of that meeting. Now, you do that in a virtual world, and Burt never shows up to the meeting. And all of a sudden, your mind starts to wonder, where is Burt? Because I didn't get the cue that I'm on the phone with the customer. And then this starts to creep in doubt, lack of trust, and all these other factors that start to influence the way we think about working from home or working remotely. And you might get a text later, but everybody else in the meeting just knows that Burt was off and not in the meeting, and who knows doing what. And it starts to create a problem for us. So these are just standards that we are learning to deal with while we're about 5 years into this journey and the scale that we're on. And I think the issue is you have to build structure and you have to have measurements around it to help you understand, are we being productive? And that's really the standard, is about productivity. And even our employee and opinion and engagement surveys that our Tanya Zion does for us so well, even those standards are sometimes measuring based upon a workforce that's in office and not always in a remote format. And I think we ought to take a look at all the things that we're doing. So if you liked that, then you can download the tough truths as stated right here by Dr. Phil. So stay with that and download those at the end of the program. You'll be able to do so and to give you some tips on how to address those issues. All right. And that is the tough truth. Burt, are you ready to
level up your HR game with an AIM Employers Association membership? Get 24/7 expert support, exclusive training, and a network of peers. Join thousands of HR leaders building better organizations. Call AIM at 800-948-5700 or visit aimea.org today to learn about becoming a member.
All right, I got ahead of myself. We're not ready for Laura on the clock yet. Burt, I'm going to finish this segment off. I got some questions for you. You know the game. I'm going to read them out. All three answers are good, but which one do you like best? You ready?
Sure. You don't want to talk about last week's program at all?
Well, if you want to go there, we can do it. I know we stirred the pot a little bit about last week's program, but let's go ahead and let's address that just so our listeners know, right?
Sure.
So last week we talked about, and you brought up, and really you were bragging a little bit about your prediction of what would happen in the court system and what would happen through our legal system. Not necessarily saying what you favored or didn't favor, but just what would happen. And everyone that listens to our program regularly knows that you're trying to represent the position of management so that people know what to do as they're trying to lead and run a business. And that's the position that you're taking. And for those that are listening for the first time today, what we had a paid sick leave law that voters in the state of Missouri voted on. And then our state Congress, I guess, has turned that decision around. And that's got a lot of people stirred up. And because you were sharing the outcome of that prediction, now people, man, they're jumping on you, and some of them me, and I don't appreciate you dragging me down with you, Burt.
Hey, Phil, that's what I'm good for. I'm good for dragging you down.
Yeah, my mother told me about friends like you. All right. Okay, so when we talk about this, we're not talking about our opinion of whether or not we think this law is good or bad for individuals. We're talking about what these laws and regulations and the things that we have to deal with that involve people from an employer's point of view, not from every individual point of view. And so the simple argument is, well, if it's good for every individual or if it's good for people, then it must be good for employers. And that's not always true, right? Because employers have to then pay for things and they have to administrate things, and they may not have the ability, technology, or financial ability to even do those things. And then that may not be good for people. So it's a big vicious circle. But we fired people up in the comment section on that, and I just don't appreciate you dragging me down with you like that.
I'm
Because
sorry about that, Phil. I'm
I
sorry
do
about
want to
that.
say, and then I'd like to get your opinion on these, is, I really don't like what the state of Missouri, what the government did. I don't like that we can vote on something and it can be changed because the voters voted, and that to me should be the way that it is. And the fact that this changed, there's a lot of reasons that they did that. Maybe you can give us some insight on what the issues were from your point of view, that why did our legislation change this voter outcome?
Yeah, well, yeah, I want to make it very clear. What I was quote unquote bragging about last week was the accuracy of my prediction, not the result of what happened. Although I do agree with the result of what happened. Again, from my perspective on what's good, ultimately good is good for business is ultimately what's good for the employees. So again, what I was touting was the accuracy of the prediction.
Right.
And again, people are going to vary on whether they think what the legislature did was a good idea or a bad idea. One thing I can say is that the law in and of itself was horribly, horribly written. It was very
Absolutely.
vague. It
Very
was
difficult to comply with. A waste of time for most employers that already
100%.
provided more than what the law was requesting.
100%. So it was horribly written. It was very vague. And so from my perspective, the law was an awful law in and of itself. The policy goal behind it may be very good, but the fact of the matter is that outside the restaurant, retail, and hospitality sector, most employers provide for sick time or vacation time or paid time off that was well in excess of what this law required. But again, that's kind of commentary on the side. I think that what some people miss is the fact that we are the show is really from the employer's perspective, not necessarily from the employee's perspective, although oftentimes those things go hand in hand. But I'm looking out for what I believe is best for business, because I think a rising tide floats all boats. And
Yeah.
if the business is doing well, if the economy is doing well, that the government shouldn't necessarily be interfering and mandating and shifting costs onto the employer, that the market should work. And when the market works, if employees are demanding certain benefits, then the employers will eventually provide those benefits. Maybe that's an optimistic outlook, but that's my outlook nonetheless.
Nonetheless, no, I like it. It's good stuff. So we will ruffle some feathers here and
Yep.
there. Stay along for the ride, and it's a good thing. I like when we spark the interest of our listeners. Nevertheless, and one of my favorite comments was is that we had a big MAGA supporter who works in the food industry, and I like the fact of their position. And I've not hidden this. I've been very open about it. Like, I voted for this. I voted for the increase in minimum wage and for the sick time. I understood what I was voting for. I did not understand how horribly written the compliance was that we would have to deal with. And I can tell you, by working with hundreds, I mean hundreds of Missouri employers, pushing up close to 1,000, that not one single employer that I worked with felt like this was a convenient, easy, and there was a million ways to do it better than what we did. And it is upon our legislators to get it right. and to not create that burden. And I think that's the position I was coming from in that as well. But we don't want to spend our time deep diving into everyone's comments, but we do read them and we appreciate them. So keep those coming along. Burt, before we do move on to the next segment and I ask you some questions, I want to answer Michelle's comment here. She's typing in, and I think it's an important one as well, but she's asking about personnel files at the request of an employer. Does she need to provide them? I'm gonna say yes. There is information in personnel files you have to provide to an employee, but you want to give us the breakdown on that?
Sure. So in Missouri, and the question is specifically related to Missouri, there is no right to access your personnel file law. That differs from our neighbors across the state in Illinois,
okay,
where they do have the right to access the personnel file. My feeling is with respect to personnel documents, hopefully there's nothing in that file that you ultimately wouldn't want to be seen by a jury. The personnel file is supposed to contain certain documents. At some point, if there's ever litigation, those documents are going to be part of the litigation, and there really shouldn't be anything super secret in an employee's personnel file.
You're going to get some comments here. People are going to, wait a minute, that's my file. It's got my name on it. I got it right.
Well, in Missouri, they don't have a legal right to see it, but I think from a policy perspective, it's a good idea to engage in a dialogue with the employee about what they want to see in their personnel file and try to accommodate that. I wouldn't necessarily make copies of things in the personnel file. That's the employer's property. But letting an employee see what's in their file, I really don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I just from a practical management standpoint, knowing Michelle and their business a little bit, the culture that they have, they got a really good culture out there. Michelle, what I've always done is I've made that information available. We've never, most employers, in particular hers, do the right things, and there's not anything in there that we're trying to hide. And I think it's good employee relations to comply with that, unless you have something that is going to be damaging to the company because you have a malicious employee. And that's what I mean by damaging. Not every employee's intent is always going to be aligned with what's best for everyone. So normally in that scenario, Michelle, I'm just like Burt, I'm going to try and comply with that and help the employee resolve their issue. All right. So let's move on here, Burt. I'm going to go back to my script because I'm not very good at following it. Are you ready for some questions and answers real quick?
If they're the ones I can't get wrong, I'm absolutely ready.
You can't get it wrong. Here's the first one. How should we define productivity in a hybrid model? By outcomes delivered, not hours logged, by peer and client feedback cycles, by self-reporting productivity with manager sign-off.
Yeah, I think all of those, I'll give you the lawyer answer that I love, Phil. It depends on sort of the nature of the work, the way each job or each job category might be measured differently. It might be one of these things. It might be a combination of all three of these things. I think what the point of the question is that we need to look at how to define productivity. And it may be a series of factors. It may be one factor, but each job needs to be looked at. We need to be cognizant of how to define productivity itself.
Yeah. And it's just hard. I mean, that was kind of part of that opening monologue. It's difficult to measure some jobs' productivity. It's just very hard to do.
Yep.
And you got to take time to figure it out. It can be done. It just takes time to figure it out. We see it when we design compensation programs all the time. All right. Question number 2. What tool is most effective to monitor remote productivity without eroding trust? Keyword there, without eroding trust. Transparent goal setting like KPIs, passive monitoring software, or bi-weekly check-ins tied to project timelines.
Yeah, again, it might be one of these things. It might be a combination of all of these things. One I want to touch on real quickly is just B, which is that passive monitoring software with
Software.
consent, of course. You want to get the employees' consent, or at least inform them that we are monitoring. But that's one that causes a lot of people to that potentially erode that trust with the employer. If people feel like their keystrokes are being monitored or their mouse movement is being monitored when they're working remotely, that really does create mistrust. And so if you are doing something like that, you definitely want to be transparent, let people know that you're doing it, so that you don't they don't have that feeling of you're trying to catch me.
Yeah, I like the one I saw on YouTube where they had the oscillating fan and they had put a little attachment on the fan, and that attachment would bump the mouse and cause it to move as it went to the left, and as it came back to the right, it would bump the mouse and cause it to move, just so that the mouse was always moving, and the person was somewhere else. All right.
Phil, that is really, really old school, I have to say, because you can go on Amazon and just search for a mouse mover, and those things are readily available. So
Well, there you go. But I
a
don't know if
fan and everything.
calling me old school is a
Mhm.
compliment, Bert, or an insult. So,
It's both.
from you, I'm going to
Both.
take it as a compliment.
It's
All
both,
right.
Phil. Ponder that.
How do we align manager and employee expectations around performance? Shared scorecards and mutual accountability plans, quarterly calibration meetings across teams, or clear tiered performance metrics with flexibility by role.
It might be one or all of those things. Again, I think
All of them are right.
yeah,
Which one do you like best?
well, I think shared scorecards and mutual accountability plans, I think is probably my favorite one there. Mutual accountability plans, when you do that, you get the employees buy-in. If they're involved in sort of setting their own goals, if they don't meet those goals, they were involved in setting the goals. So there's a certain amount of buy-in and ownership of that when you involve them in the process.
That's right. That's right. I like this one. A lot of workplaces deal with this one here. How do we handle resentment between in-office and remote employees? And that's a real deal. That resentment does exist. Yeah.
It
Um,
really does.
Normalize hybrid norms. Visibility doesn't equal value. Offer rotation or choice when possible. Create a more desirable in-office atmosphere, dress code flexibility, in-office schedules, those types of things to help the in-office employees.
Yeah, I think these are all good strategies, Phil. If I had the answer to this one, maybe I'd be retired by now. I don't know. This is really difficult because you've got
It
some
is.
upper level employees in an organization who the visibility isn't as important as the lower level employees. And an example of that, the easiest example would be a manufacturing environment. You might have office employees and managers and supervisors who don't need to be out on the floor producing the widgets. But if you don't have the hourly line workers out there to make the widgets, they don't get made. And
No
so
widgets get made. That's
they
right.
have to be there. And so that does create and breed resentment. I think that kind of gets to your opinion, which is we got to get everybody back to the office. We got to get everybody back to the facility. Just from a leadership standpoint, we need to be there. And
Yeah.
so this is a really difficult question.
That is a difficult question. It's a difficult topic, and that's why we've been focusing so much on it this month. All right, final question here, Bert. Then we're going to get to lawyer on the clock. I promise you. When managers are tasked with deciding the optimal hybrid work schedule, their decisions should be based on what other managers are doing, based on the need for the team to have in-person team building and learning cross sharing, based upon each individual's employee's desire and needs.
I'm not going to give you an it depends.
All
B,
right.
the second choice is by far my favorite. It is based on
You
the
don't
need
like
of the
what
team.
other managers are doing? Say,
No,
just say, well, that's what they're doing, so that's what
yeah,
we're going to do.
not my favorite way of managing. Yeah, I think based on the need of the team to have in-person team building and learning and sharing, it's got to be situational and based on the needs of the team itself and the work that needs to be done. And I think that the work is what dictates the potential of a hybrid work schedule.
Yeah. And when I'm working with other organizations or even looking at my own organization, that's the one that causes me the most angst, and I think causes many other leaders the most discomfort. And that is, you're trying really hard to build a team in all aspects of your business, right?
Yep.
We're much better. Everyone understands it when we work together as a unit versus individually. And when everyone is used to working together in a mature organization, you go home, you can still have that because we already know each other. We met each other in person, and then we went home. Well, when your organization starts to turn over and everyone now doesn't know each other and works from afar, you don't have that same team calibration, and it creates some problems for the workplace. So I'm with you on that
Yep.
straight away. All right, Burt, now let's get to Lawyer on the Clock. Are you ready?
I'm ready, Phil, although you didn't even leave me a tenth of an hour.
No, I'm going to give you a little bit extra time here. Nick, pull that lever.
Curious about a case that could wreck your workplace? Lucky for you, we have a lawyer on the clock.
All right, so Phil, I've got a few topics I want to cover today on Lawyer on the Clock, and just trying to get my notes in front of me here. So the first one I want to talk about, I'm just going to mention it real quickly. There's a lot in the news these days about no tax on tips. The big story in Congress right now is that the Republican lawmakers in the House are working on a large-scale tax bill that would extend the 2017 tax cuts and, among other things, end taxes on tips and overtime pay. While those discussions have been playing themselves out, a senator moved to pass what's called a standalone no tax on tips bill through a process that requires unanimous consent, meaning no floor opposition, and it passed. 100 senators voted for this no tax on tips bill. And this bipartisan support is really significant. Even though the bill still has to clear some hurdles, it represents an important step here, and it might end up getting approved as part of President Trump's one big beautiful tax bill that the GOP is currently fighting over. But if passed in both chambers, the act then would need to be signed by President Trump, and that, of course, would be expected to happen since he campaigned on the promise of no tax on tips to service industry workers last fall. Just a couple of quick notes. The deduction would be capped at $25,000 per year. It would apply only to income tax, meaning workers would continue paying payroll tax on tips. And to claim the deduction, an individual's compensation must be less than $160,000 in 2025, a cutoff that would be indexed to inflation. So something to keep our eyes on. I do think that there is a lot of momentum and a lot of bipartisan support for that hospitality, restaurant, retail sector. And for all those who didn't like my comments last week regarding the Missouri paid sick leave, hopefully you'll like my comments on this one because I think this is going to happen for you. Next,
it definitely sounds like it. When's the last time you can remember something getting 100% support?
Seriously.
That's a new
So
day.
it is.
Very good.
It is. All right. So the next one I want to chat about real quickly is the Republican lawmakers are also tossing around some proposals on Capitol Hill right now, which would make it much easier to classify workers as independent contractors. You know, this is one of those pendulum issues that from administration to administration, that pendulum has really swung wildly in recent years on who can be an independent contractor and who can't be an independent contractor. Republicans have advanced a bill called the Modern Worker Empowerment Act, which would amend the Fair Labor Standards Act and the National Labor Relations Act in two ways. It would deem a worker an independent contractor if that person engages them, if the person engaging them doesn't exercise significant control over their work, and the individual has the ability to use discretion and judgment in the performance of their job. Now, of course, this is a really big deal because on top of not being eligible for overtime pay, independent contractors are not entitled to certain other legal protections and benefits afforded to employees, such as minimum wage and paid and unpaid sick time. So just another thing to really keep our eyes on out there. And then the last one I want to talk about and just mention real quickly, Phil, is I mentioned on the program, I think last week or a couple weeks ago, about the EEOC is going to be collecting EEO-1 data this year. And so that's, of course, the annual workplace demographic data. The collection window opened this past Tuesday, but it also included, interestingly, a warning from the EEOC's acting chair that employers cannot act on protected characteristics like race and sex to try to enhance diversity. So there was an online post on the agency's website for data collection. The EEOC had said that employers will have from May 20 through June 24 with no grace period to submit their EEO-1 data. The surveys include, of course, demographic data by job category and sex, as well as race or ethnicity for one snapshot period, a single pay period from October through December for the reporting year. Submitting the EEO-1 forms is mandatory for companies in the private sector with 100 or more employees and for federal contractors with at least 50 workers, and also that also meet certain contracting criteria. This acting chair, though, said Title VII's protections apply equally to all workers, regardless of their race or sex, and that there is no diversity exception to Title VII's requirements. She went on to say, as you report data on your employer's race, ethnicity, and sex, I want to take this opportunity to remind you of your obligations under Title VII not to take any employment actions based on or motivated in whole or in part by an employee's race, sex, or other protected characteristic. So again, when you are reporting this data, you have to report the data accurately, but you cannot use the data to take employment actions based on or motivated by the employee's protected status. I think that's the point that Acting Chair Commission Member Lucas was trying to make. So again, EEO-1 data is currently being collected, but how you use the data, you need to be careful about that you don't create any unintended or invite unintended litigation to your company.
Absolutely, and something we've always been careful of, even before this most recent administration's efforts.
Hey,
All
Phil,
right.
I think in the first time since we've been running Lawyer on the Clock, I actually did get it done within a tenth of an hour.
Well, I mean,
6 minutes.
We're working on your remote measurements, Burt.
Yes.
So we're, on behalf of Ogletree, I'm doing my best to make sure that, you have your remote measurements of productivity down, and today you get a star.
Thank you for once.
Yeah. For once. All right. Well, we appreciate your comments, and now, as always, engage with us online. We're happy to have that. Send us a note if you got a topic you want us to discuss. We will consider that as well. Until then, you have a great holiday week, and we will be back next week at 7:30 Central. Take care. Bye-bye.
Facing complex employment law challenges? As an AIM member, you get direct access to Ogletree Deacon's top attorneys for expert guidance and defense. Call AIM at 800-948-5700 or visit aimea.org to engage expert workplace specialists today. Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please like it, share it, and make sure it's on your calendar every week. Ask your burning questions anytime and let us know what topics you'd like us to cover. Just go to hrask.org and be sure to leave a review wherever you catch our show to help other HR pros find us as well. We'll see you next week when we discuss what's happening this week at work.